and welcome back everyone. Laure here, and joining me right now is Levi after the crazy victory against FunPlus. Thank you very much for joining me. I know you love your Xayah. You've been very successful with the champion through the split, so how was it to play the first game on stage against FunPlus and win against them?
所以首先恭喜你赢下第一场的比赛。那我们听说你好像非常喜欢蔡雅这支角色，那你玩这支角色胜率也蛮高的。那你们第一站有办法赢下 FPX， 你目前有什么样的感想？
就很兴奋，因为真的今天是第一次打世界赛，然后可以赢下那么强的对手，就我们大家都很开心。
I'm very, very excited because this is our first time at Worlds, and to beat an opponent that is that powerful makes us all very happy.
Yeah, I mean, I want to know, people expect a lot coming from FunPlus here at Worlds, so how was it for you guys coming on stage against them for the first game?
大家其实对 FPX 的期待是非常非常高的。那第一场比赛你们就遇到这样的一个强敌，你自己是什么样的一个感想？
就因为我们大家都是第一打世界赛，然后可能大家会紧张什么，那就希望我们不要，教练跟我们讲的，就教练在比赛前一天跟我们说，不要留下遗憾，然后放开去打就好，大家就开心的上来打，然后就赢了。
So I think it's our first time at Worlds and everyone has a lot of nerves, but our coach yesterday night told us that you have to remember to leave no regrets and really just let go and give it your all. So we came on stage very happy and we just can't believe we won.
Yeah, I mean, you guys showed no nerves at all. You went all in, and one thing I found interesting is the fact that you chose a potential 1-3-1 composition. I mean, you had some possibilities to side lane, and even then, you were all for team fights. So explain that, please.
就刚那场的话，其实你们阵容有蛮多1-3-1的一个机会，但是你们到最后似乎都好像是靠团战这样取得胜利的这样子。那你可以稍微解释一下这个游戏的进展吗？
就因为他们选的前中期比较强势的英雄，然后就是我们选的像，就是除了纳尔以外，其他角色都算是比较打团战，然后后面的角色。然后教练走之前跟我们提醒了，一定要用打团战赢游戏，然后 Rest 就会过来跟我们一起打团这样。
So FPX composition was very, very strong in the early and the mid game. And for our composition, actually outside of the Gnar, all of our champions were really good in the team fights as well. So before we went on to stage, our coach actually especially mentioned to us that we have to beat them in the team fights. And a lot of times Rest, the top laner, would come down with his Gnar and join the fight.
Interesting. Well, thank you very much for the insights. Congrats again for winning the first game. Thank you again, Clement, for the translation. Now back to you guys.
Thank you so much, and welcome back to the State Farm Analyst Desk for what has been an explosive day one of the World 2019 group stage, and still one game to come. I just want to call out kind of the energy of Levi in that interview and just the absolute joy radiating off his face. Deservedly so. What a victory from J-Team over the LPL champions, Raz.
Look, there's a lot of adrenaline rush right there. You can see it from in the interview, but god damn. All right.
We'll leave it at that. Changing the topic for you. Last game of the day, we have Splyce up versus GAM Esports. And 2 years ago, GAM Esports, then known as the Gigabyte Marines, they absolutely burst onto the international stage, and now they are back. 2017 was crazy for them, and they leveled up the VCS as a region.
And honestly, they were a team that captured the heart of every neutral. Everyone wanted to talk about the Gigabyte Marines back 2 years ago. Now GAM Esports are here, and it's not just a name. They really do follow in their footsteps. One of my favorite stats is it's been a very famous story that the Vietnamese region is the most bloody. The most kills happen in that region. But actually, it's pulled up by Loki and especially the Gigabyte Marines. They really do build up and play that high action style, and you never know where all the champions are going till all 5 are locked in and that 20-second timer comes up.
Yeah, and this time they have a lot of experience in the top side of the map. That's something that a lot of the times the Vietnamese teams bring in. There are a lot of young players that we've seen in the past. This time around, Levi and Xerxe are certainly going to be coming.
Levi's back, finally.
There we go.
So a stint in the LCS and in the LPL, and now he's back maybe where he belongs. That would be left to be seen, but he's definitely also holding that roster together and has a huge influence in those aggressive moves they still make.
And this is how they typically play. It is Levi playing through Xerxe up towards the top side of the map. They try and snowball through that lane, and they leverage the strong duo. And it's surprising how little of the team's damage actually comes from the two primary carry roles of their mid and AD, and most of it comes from their top laner and jungler.
And on top of that, also their support, which is a bit crazy, not very traditional in terms of where the damage goes in the team. Now they are up versus Splyce in their first game. Now Splyce, we saw them in the plains, and I think it's fair to say they stumbled, but they didn't fall. How do we feel about Splyce after seeing that best of 5 versus the Unicorns of Love?
So I think one of the biggest things to acknowledge for Splyce is that for a lot of these players, this is their first ever international competition. And Peter Dunn was pretty vocal on social media about how this team has struggled to overcome and play at the absolute limit. We saw Vizicsacsi stepping up, but some of the younger players still have a lot to prove. And I think that that stint through the play-ins should give them a lot more confidence. And coming into today, I'm hoping to see a lot more from Humanoid, who's one of the best performing mid laners of the regular season.
And it's not the first time that we've seen a team struggle during the best of 5s in their play-ins and then come out stronger for it because of it. Cloud9 is a great example of that. So for me, you look at the roster, Humanoid and Kobbe are incredible players that I think that they'll be pooling resources into.
Indeed, but it's still left to be seen how this matchup will play out for them. Of course, hopefully the jitters from that UOL best of 5 are over. We saw very positive reactions from the coach Duke and some of the players. Yes, we made it. We are going to the group stage. But now the question is, how do they do in kind of the play styles that are prevalent for the other teams in this group? Because in the Marines and the other teams, it is all action from minute 1, and Splyce is not that kind of team.
Exactly, that stylistic mismatch of a team that loves to turn the pressure up, turn the temperature up very nice and early versus a team that's usually about really feeling out the game and getting there at the end. And I want to mention the previous result, right? J-Team beating FBX. Now suddenly the group is wide open. So the pressure's being actually ratcheted up because now you don't just guarantee FBX first seed. And suddenly, looking at this match, and it's not must win, but how much you can achieve here and what it means for the standings cannot be understated.
So I'll come out and say that I think Splyce should do well in this playstyle difference because I think that a team that's willing to trade sides on the map, be able to mitigate a lot of damage, that's actually done a lot of damage to VCS teams in the past. And so coming into this one, if the Marines don't come out incredibly far ahead in the early game, the late game Splyce should be able to take over.
It's always the question in these, the one that if a team like the Marines completely throws you for a loop, it is how good you can withstand it all in the mid-game. We've seen in 2017, they took TSM to 5 games in the play-in stage. They almost even made it to the quarterfinal after that tiebreaker versus Fnatic. So how good do we think Splyce is going to be able to withstand a Marines that get running in the early game?
Well, I have high expectations for Splyce. I think that one thing that often gets overlooked is how they do still have a good early game, thanks to Xerxe. He has shown throughout the plains that he can create a lot of early game leads, but as you said, it's the mid game where issues start to arise. And I believe that GAM does not have the skill to effectively punish a lot of the mistakes that we see from Splyce, along with the fact that I think the mid and AD carry difference is huge. So I put a lot of faith in Humanoid and Kobbe going into this matchup.
And the trick for me is, you know, Norskeren being able to track the support. As long as he can go mid, and a lot of the times the mid laner Kiaya is being able to pick up like the Kled or really aggressive mid lane options so they can force these fights, as long as Norskeren's able to track the enemy support, be there to get those numbers advantages is what I want to be able to see from him.
When we look at what we saw in play-ins from Splyce, and if you'd have to think about some players that really will need to step up if Splyce wants to do anything in this group, who would come to mind, Papa?
I'm more thinking generally here because I'm just thinking about the fact that this is definitely a tournament that's super open in terms of picks. You can run a lot of non-standard bot laners. So I think Kobbe is going to have to really have his wits around him, probably in a matchup he's not super practiced in. And just in general, the reason why I think, you know, my hot take was Marines out of group, so it should be no surprise that I'd predict them to win this game, is that they're so practiced at playing crazy stuff that it's not likely to be some of these other teams that hear something's good, put 5 games into it and try to run it on stage. They've got a lot of crazy ideas, and they're probably just going down the checklist and working out which one works for today.
Yeah, that's a great point. We also saw possibly that champion pool of Vizicsacsi being an issue. If you're up versus a team that's able to flex a lot, that becomes an issue. However, that bot lane, again, it comes back to me from that because Kobbe has been known to throw some curveballs in that bot lane as well. The Vel'Koz, very famously.
Love some vein as well.
If it comes to that, in draft, do you think Splyce can challenge Marines in terms of flex pick, adaptability?
No.
Not even a little bit.
I think Splyce is the kind of team that comes in very well prepared. They have a plan and they stick to the plan, and then it's about whether or not they can properly execute said plan. Against the Gigabyte Marines, and I mean, we only have to look domestically. They struggled against Fnatic and G2 for one of those main reasons. They're difficult teams to plan for. I think that will be a hurdle that they have to overcome.
But once they get into the game, and if it works out, we know they know their fundamentals. So let's see what happens. The first day of groups is concluding with a banger of a match. So let's send it away for GAM Esports versus Splyce.
We've got one more match to play out to close out the first day of Worlds 2019 groups. So let's welcome our teams representing the VCS as their #1 seed. It's GAM Esports! In the top lane, Xerxe. Jungle, Levi. In the mid lane, Kiaya. In the bot lane, Zin. In the support, Hyuba. Coach Yuna and substitutes Yoshino and Slay. Their opponents fought their way through the play-in stage. So give it up for Europe's Splyce! In the top lane, Vizicsacsi. Jungle, Xerxe. Mid lane, Humanoid. Bot lane, Kobbe. Support, Norskeren. Coach Duke and substitute Sharp and Arome. Players, please take your seats and we'll see you in picks and bans.
Welcome back to the Castle Jazz. Thank you. Quick shot. Great announcing on the day so far. And we've got an awesome match ahead of us. And we heard it talked about on the analyst desk. This group is now wide open. The expectation was, okay, you've got the 6-0 Chinese squad. Who can fight for second? Who can fight for first?
Absolutely. And if we're going to talk about stylistic mismatches within this group, I think this is the biggest stylistic mismatch on paper. When you have a look at how GAM approaches the game and has always approached their game with a really strong jungler, Tunikun as their coach, and the ability to just light up an area of the map. Splyce doesn't really play that way from everything I can see. You know, Vedi has a lot of faith in their early game, but I've seen some weaknesses, and I think that GAM are one of those teams that if they are able to find them, will exploit them very heavily.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, no one at the entire tournament plays like the Marines do, right? This is a team that, you know, in the finals, they were running like full melee compositions, right? You know, Garen bot lane, Kled mid lane, you know, Renekton, Gragas, champions like this all across the map. They're willing to play incredibly aggressive comps. They're willing to play full-on early game and dive you and fight you nonstop. And while we've talked about, you know, the relatively low kills in a lot of the games today, GAM is definitely a team that could flip that on its head. They are so incredibly bloody, incredibly high combined kills per minute.
And what we've seen from the VCS for kind of the last year and a half is whilst they have these ideas, right, you know, the full melee comps, the lane swaps, they also just have really good individual players, right? They come from one of the biggest servers in League of Legends.
Second biggest server,
yeah, they've been able to just level up their play due to their proximity to some of the other Asian servers. And their players are starting to get recognized internationally. Now Levi, after a stint in Academy, as well as the LPL, back into the VCS. And this is all eyes on Levi as he returns to the international stage.
Yeah, and I think rightfully so. He's been such an exciting player when he has made it to that international stage, but they are going to have their work cut out for them. Splyce, certainly a very solid team. While I would not describe them as explosive or, you know, early game action, they have great fundamentals and they are very solid if you allow them to get into their groove. And that really is about fighting around Kobbe, late game setups around Baron. They are a strong team in that regard.
And they do have two explosive players when they are on specific picks. Xerxe can be incredibly aggressive in the early game, and Humanoid on Assassins and on something like the Cassiopeia can also take it to you in the laning phase as well. And I think that they're the areas of the draft that I would prioritize if I'm Splyce. We expect Kobbe to be on a scaling crit style AD carry, but I want to see Xerxe and Humanoid be able to take it to the mid 2v2 and maybe even try and help out Ottawamne on the top lane.
Yeah, certainly the case. You know, Vizicsacsi, you know, is a player I think who's going to have to really step up here. You know, someone who had been receiving criticism throughout the play-ins for not necessarily really performing to the level that he was expecting, and he's going to be going up against Xerxe, who is an incredibly strong player. You know, one of the best from his region, and looking to prove himself on the international stage.
And the thing about Chachi is he had good games, but then he also had some clangers as well. But he's heavily targeted. This isn't going to be the case in the current draft, right? We were seeing in that best of 5 versus UOL, 3 bans go to him nearly every single game. And now if you put him on something like a Gangplank, you know, like an R, he's going to have much more freedom to play his style of League of Legends and impact those team fights.
Well, you got some fights coming on right here already. Hard engage locked in for Splyce, Gragas in the jungle, Nautilus down in support. And meanwhile, great laners here for GAM with the Tristana. So frequently is actually seen as a top or mid laner, and we have seen Syndra bot, so you gotta hold that one available.
So let's play a game. Who's going where, Ezreal? Show me your analytical prowess, because this could go anywhere.
Yeah, I mean, it is really hard to know, right? Because this is a team, I think, more than anyone, that can really kind of throw a wrench in the gears. If I had to guess, I am going to think that they are going to play a mage bot. I'm guessing Syndra bot, Tristana mid, and Akali top would be my prediction. Doesn't mean I'm going to be right on even a single one, but this is a team that likes to play non-standard, that likes to challenge you, and I don't think that it makes sense to put Tristana in the bottom lane and play a scaler against the likes of Kobbe, because that is his game, and GAM needs to play aggressive, and solo lane Tristana can do that.
Yeah, and I'm going to say it's actually going to be Trist top, because I think they thought that the Gangplank was going to come. Marksman into Gangplank, and Mininar also doesn't deal with the Marksman very well either, so I would expect Xerxe to be able to pick that one up, but I think that your train of thought is exactly right. You got to throw everything out the window when you think about GAM. You got to think about how they're going to attack the lanes as opposed to how they're going to make it to team fighting, right? Because they do go at you very early.
And I honestly wouldn't even be shocked to see them go for something like an Ignite Trist, right? You know, these are the kind of plays that they are willing to actually go for. Tristana with PTA is a very strong laner, and any real ranged matchups can be a difficulty for Gangplank in the early game, because Tristana can be knocking down those barrels. And if you do want to go super aggressive and look for something like the Ignite, look for these early aggressive plays, GP can be at threat, you know, even pre-6.
Well, one final ban to come through for GAM here is the Kaisa and Xayah, the bog standard marksman carries for the bot lane, already off the table. We have to play something else here in this role. No one to play mages, no one to play a whole bunch of stuff. We'll see what he wants to go for. Cassiopeia actually is the drop-off there. That's a big one for Humanoid.
Yeah, it certainly is, and I would expect Kobbe to go towards something. I actually want to see him maybe play Jhin again. It's one of the picks that he played really nicely. This is currently a tankless lineup. Sure, there is going to be threat from the Akali. Ezreal's a little bit more standard. They are going to out-damage. As the game progresses, this is going to, if they get Corki, for example, this is going to be one of those comps that if you don't get on top of them, they will just live.
And I also actually really think this is intelligent, given the style that your opponents are going to bring forth, right? You know, we know GAM is going to do all this crazy stuff. We're not sure who's going to be laning where. So play a defensive marksman. Play a marksman that can scale up, that can play somewhat safe and survive, you know, that early stages, because I do think Splyce is setting themselves up incredibly well for the later stages of the game.
And wait till last pick to grab their mid laner most likely here. Can still be flexible, but that's the expectation as, ooh, is it gonna be more assassins? They've already got 2. They need the 3rd for the set bonus, and that is it. Kha'Zix locked in.
And you say you like the scaling, that you like the fact that they're going to get some form of normalcy in their draft. And I just think, how do you survive against the current lineup that GAM have if you don't have any proactivity in their lane? It's going to be on Humanoid to generate some form of pressure here. He will go towards a LeBlanc, but I feel like so much of this early game, once again, is on Xerxe and Humanoid to be able to generate any kind of push in the mid lane, because otherwise the map will just collapse.
And I mean, that's honestly Splyce's MO. That is generally how they do actually play it out. And funnily enough, we may end up getting the Tristana mid, and if I actually got all 3 of those right, then I'm shocked. But you know, certainly some ability to actually swap these around, and it is going to be non-standard, right? It is going to be Syndra playing in the bottom lane. Would be surprised if they don't actually move the Trist up to the top lane, but you know, certainly you can play that Tristana mid very effectively, and if you are going to be able to get the push on LeBlanc, you can threaten those turret plates, and it is actually going to be the setup here. So Akali top, Trist mid, Syndra bot.
Yeah, I mean, regardless, I don't think any of Akali's lanes are great. The LeBlanc chain reveals through stealth, so there's, you know, it's hard to be Zeros kind of regardless. Even if you do manually swap your players around, none of the solo lanes are great for her. I'd put Gangplank advantage as well.
The other thing we can keep in mind is that even if they are putting these players on the champions, it doesn't mean they can't lane swap, right? It doesn't mean you can't put the Tristana up against the Gangplank anyway, because while I agree, Akali doesn't have, you know, the most dominant matchups, you can survive a lot of them, but certainly Tristana is very threatening into that GP. Perhaps, though, they're feeling it's a little bit too dangerous.
Summoner's Rift awaits as we close out day 1 of the world's group stage for the battle between GAM Esports and Splyce from the LEC. This is going to be a very interesting battle. #1 team from Vietnam, #3 from Europe. Splyce fighting through the regional qualifier. A short run in the playoffs, but made them work for it and got all the way to Worlds, got through the play-in stage, fought that one valiantly as well. GAM, oh, very strong team. Crushed the playoffs, put a new roster together. This split, swapped in 2 new players, role swapped 2 more.
Yeah, look, the website I normally use for my stats, GOL, is an absolute mess. Like, there's just champions and picks everywhere on this GAM lineup. And, you know, we've got role swaps, we've got 2 separate supports playing 3 games each throughout their playoff run as well. However, they did have a really good split once they found any form of consistency in their lineup. And you know, just to continue the narrative. They also deal well with a chaos-style League of Legends. They've had Loki kind of throw all the questions at them as well. So this is a team that not only plays really quick and explosive themselves, but also can deal with the style very well in the VCS. Now, what we don't see a lot in the VCS is that slow down the frustration style. And we don't necessarily see it all that much in the LEC anymore, but I think that that is certainly more of Splyce's MO.
Yeah, and it has been, you know, their kind of play style for quite some time. And, you know, they do not necessarily play against teams as kind of as crazy as GAM, but there are extremely proactive, very aggressive teams like Fnatic, like G2 that they are having to deal with. And, you know, honestly, they have not dealt well with them. But the question is GAM of that caliber? Are they able to, you know, run over Splyce in the early game like some of these other great LEC teams can do?
And I mean, the serious answer is no, right? G2 defending MSI champions coming in, and they are one of the favorites to win the entirety of the tournament. So it's not necessarily a slight as Kiaya.
Nice trade. Yeah, Rocket jumps in for the slow, gets a 3-stack and explosive charge, Humanoid at 120 HP.
Yeah, honestly, anytime you can press the attack with your E up, you are going to have a winning trade. It's almost impossible for most champions to actually fight back into this. We are seeing Chachi, though, you know, handling this top lane pretty well, utilizing the grass to actually poke out Xerxe. And Xerxe really just needs to get the wave into the turret and base. He needs to get a reset off here, and that is why he's trying to shove so heavily, but his jungler's not up here. He knows that Xerxe could be, and this is actually a pretty difficult spot for him. He's kind of putting himself at risk.
He doesn't have his E skill just yet. Needs 2 more minions till he gets the dash to get away. Has the stealth, waiting for that cooldown as The blue's going to be taken. Levi is around. Sees, okay, Gragas is not in the river, so you're pretty safe to push this one in, which means he can burn the W. That Scryer's Bloom allowed him to burn the stealth, get a little bit of extra energy, try to complete that shove, and this should be the wave he can push in. Xerxe could come around. They actually would have seen the Scryer's Bloom if they were watching. Levi on the other side, they now see the Kha'Zix. He doesn't see Gragas. I don't know if there's going to be any engage, but as he walks back, now in through the backside, no spotting it again, jumps over, takes some damage. Xerxe just going back to his side of the map.
Yeah, Chachi actually did a really good job manipulating the minions, kind of stepping forward and allowing himself to tank a little bit of the range minion aggro, so it didn't fully get into the turret, and it did put Xerxe in a pretty awkward spot, but has been able to stay healthy enough, and now with Chachi out of mana, it's going to be able to be comfortably pushed in.
Yeah, I completely agree, and additionally, Kiaya had so much presence in the mid lane that he was able to join the play, as Hook does land bottom side.
That's a stun as well. Decent damage going across there. Ooh, that's a minion. Just gets in the way. Norskeren can't find a champ.
And that's what League of Legends has become so much about, not creating these one-on-one matchups, but being able to bring that additional member, being able to float your pressure from your winning lanes into the losing sides of the map and being able to impact. That's why I thought Humanoid would go for something very aggressive. Obviously, LeBlanc, once level 6 is reached, should have kill threat on this Tristana, but with Press the Attack, with Ignite, pre-6, I feel like this should be a very good lane for Kiaya.
It certainly can be, and honestly, even post-6, if you're willing to itemize for the matchup, go for things like an early Hex Shrinker, it can be difficult for LeBlanc to actually have enough damage to fully push through that shield, until you are kind of further on into the game.
And even on top of that, he's running bone plating, right? He's got some defensive, stats in here as well. 40 magic resist, has the, the 1 rune in the MR as well. So, decently poised to survive a lot of this all in. It is Ignite Trist after all, of course, just mid lane Ignite Trist.
And I think that, when you're talking about Gragas as well, the defensive itemization does make a lot of sense. You're going to be playing against double MR, and I think that, this has been a very standard and good early game so far for Splyce. They were able to protect the Gangplank. They looked for an early opportunity, but weren't able to make it work. Red buff was stolen away, but now with Predator boots up and available, you would expect Xerxe to look to make his first real meaningful, impactful gank on the map. As long as you keep your flash and have Predator on Gragas, he's nearly unrivaled with the amount of damage that he brings to these early game skirmishes.
He certainly is, but I think something that Splyce may be considering is just utilizing Xerxe more for counter gank, because if you are the ones to actually start this fight off, and this Kha'Zix is there to actually, answer that gank, Kha'Zix can certainly burst down, a squishy Gragas so incredibly fast. And that is the kind of play that Levi is going to be looking for. These isolated fights and these fights where he can actually answer and have people kind of opting in and committed to it, and then look for the engage.
Especially against mid lane priority, right? So you're going to have to look at every single fight in. If Xerxe can't kill them before Kiaya's roam is there, then it's a losing fight. So every time he goes for one of these ganks or one of these shadows, he has to know that it's potentially a 2v3.
A couple of biscuits for Chachi, puts the ult on in, and now Xerxe has to jump backwards, finds the E, nice body slam flash. There's the flash to follow, and out he's gonna go, flash for flash.
Yeah, really good timing on that gank, because Xerxe was not yet 6, so he has to actually commit the flash, and even though he was late on it, Levi playing this Kha'Zix can easily solo out the dragon on the other side of the map, and getting an Ocean at 630 is so big for your laning phase. It almost gives you like a get out of jail free out in any hard matchup, and this is gonna be feeling very, very good, really across the board.
And I think the main benefactor for this is going to be Xin on the Syndra. He's already gone double Doran's ring. Now with an Ocean Drake, being so far away from the blue buff isn't really going to impact the Syndra. That's one of the weaknesses of the early game of the bottom lane mages, and should shore that up.
Yeah, it certainly does. And even for the Akali, champions without mana, people often look to and say, all right, well, the Ocean doesn't really do much for you. But in a match where you actually have the push, you can absorb the poke here from GP while you're actually spending all your energy, spending the Shroud to push it out, and then simply back up and regen, with that Ocean Dragon. So certainly a nice takeaway. And this is going to be feeling good this early on in the game.
That was really cute from Norskeren. He walks out of base directly towards mid lane. They time it up with Humanoid just dipping forward for some wave clear. They're looking for Tristana to be able to leap in there, go for an all-in. Norskeren would have been there for the counter again, getting out of lane early, making sure that he's supporting the other waves. And he's also on a really good timing on Kobbe's reset, so no punish in the bottom lane. I think that's the kind of fluidity that we've come to, expect out of the LEC teams.
Yeah, certainly the case, but you can see Hugh3, he's also looking to roam. Has the full Moby Boots buy here early on. We have been seeing more and more in competitive people actually opting for the support item upgrade, looking to get more gold generation in the early game. So, Hugh3 is going to have to try to make some plays to justify this buy instead of just upgrading for your Targons.
Because you have to think about how Pyke warps map state and what he wants to actually be able to do. So normal supports, they want the gold generation because so much of their gold is based off the back of that. So much of Pyke's gold is actually off his ultimate, so wants to be involved in these skirmishes.
Oh, pulls him right out, though. That's going to be not really much of anything, as he's still too far away to get hit by anyone else, but actually yanked him right out of that dash. Now, a fight in the top side. Blocks him away. Trade of blows everywhere, though. Humanoid, ouch, down to 2/3, but Kiaya hit pretty hard as well, and now here comes Xerxe.
Yeah, Xerxe does have his ultimate, so Kiaya has to be very careful here.
Far enough back, he's going to stay alive as the turret's going to deny that CS, but regardless, Splyce getting some damage across.
Yeah, I mean, if you can't knock down this Trist, he has the Dorans, the Vamp, and the Ocean now kicking in, so he is going to sustain back up quite quickly here, and that's something that's, going to be problematic for Humanoid if he cannot actually threaten the 100-0. Tristana really does start to win out in these mage matchups simply because of your sustain.
This was a great team up. This is unspotted so far. Remember, they have the perfect timing on the red buff from the steal early.
Top instead, it's warded, so now it's time for Chachi to run away, but a 3v1 dive could still happen. They don't have any way to land the skewer as those minions are in the way. So the ward goes down, the red buff started, but Xerxe knows he can't really take this one as he gets some damage on a Levi, but still with Q3 there, it's more numbers for GAM.
Yeah, and Kiaya actually pushed in mid, so not going to be any ability to actually challenge here. But that being said, Levi is establishing a CS advantage. Not sure it's quite enough yet to really justify this Kha'Zix pick, so he does want to try to make some plays, and they're looking to threaten a 3v2.
And a big dive in the bottom side, so much burst damage there. First blood comes across for Kobbe.
And beautifully played, diving onto Chachi, not an option. He has the ult, he has the backup from Xerxe. However, they do have good numbers on the bottom side of the map, and that was just flawlessly executed.
Yeah, and I love this from Splyce. They knew that Pyke was up on the top side, and honestly, Q3 kind of overstayed his welcome. You have Xerxe there behind Vizicsacsi, defending any potential dive, and that just allowed Norskeren and Kobbe to set up such an easy dive. When you have level 6 on the Nautilus, there's really no escaping that from Xin.
And especially when you get multiple waves to do it, right? You spot him out first on the control ward, then he sticks around for the red invade, then he goes back for the top lane dive. That is at least 2 waves that you're going to be able to just force them in. And Xin doesn't want to respect because he doesn't want to fall behind on Syndra, such a powerful mid-game mage. Tried to step up, tried to get greasy, and was punished for it.
Yeah, it certainly was. And honestly, thus far, Splyce looking like the Karate Kid. Wax on, wax off. They're absorbing all the blows. They're not, allowing GAM to find any ins really across the map. And this is, I think, exactly the kind of game you want to see Splyce playing if you are, an LEC fan.
Well, Zeros has to get away from Chachi, who's back to full HP, and push them off. 400, sorry, actually only a 200 gold difference now in this one. And the Ocean Drake doesn't pay as many dividends late game. It pays off in the early laning, which now going a bit Splyce's way right here. Again, that bot lane dive really well done. As we pressed 11 minutes into the game, Mountain Drake spawning in 30 seconds. The Rift Herald already alive. We'll see if someone plays for top side to make that one happen.
And this is one of those games that I feel like the Splyce comp, whilst doesn't necessarily outscale, does have a very easy execution philosophy. You just kite back, use all the control of the Gangplanks, of the Ezreal, to be able to chunk out your opponent. They can't really start many objectives against you. As soon as you have the chunks there, it's very easy to also go forward on these compositions. So I would expect GAM to try and change something up here.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, while there is some pretty good scaling with Tristana and so on and so forth, the major problem for GAM in the late game is how do you start a fight, right? Is Kha'Zix just going to jump in? No, there's incredible engage on the side of Splyce, and when you're the team that gets to dictate when you fight and when you do not fight, that is such an incredible advantage. And between Gragas and Nautilus, you can choose your moments, whereas GAM needs side lane advantages because that is really the only way to kind of force the hand of Splyce.
And some tanks that have good engage, hold the thought, don't have terrific disengage. You think about an Ornn. He's not all that great on the disengage, one of the best engage ultimates in the game. However, both Gragas and Nautilus are very good disengage champions as well. So they don't have necessarily the tools to force a fight. Splyce have good answers in response to the tools they do have, like the lockdown guaranteed CC onto something like an Akali. And, you know, they've been able to get control of the map to this point. Now we'll take their first dragon.
And speaking of Akali, Xerxe is killing a minion wave behind the tier 2 turret up in the top lane, now walking his way down because he had no TP, but he's still not going to be there in time. Mountain Drake will go cleanly over here to Splyce. Xerxe is going for farm. He knows Mountain Drake, by the way, is the weakest Drake in the game right now, and says, okay, we'll sacrifice that. I'm going to take an extra minion wave, an extra monster camp here instead, try to be one of the carriers of the side lane, because to your point about engage, 5v5, not going to happen.
Yeah, certainly not. And thus far, you know, GAM has not been able to really establish any major advantages. The Kha'Zix has, you know, been kind of left blank here in the early game, and you know, you do start to get worried here for the Marines. You know, if they're not able to kind of enforce their playstyle on their opponents, you know, are they able to actually match Splyce in team fighting? And that's something that's really going to remain to be seen.
And Kha'Zix and Nocturne are two of the most interesting champions in the mid game when it comes to these 1-3-1s. We've already talked about, you know, the fact that Splyce probably have the edge in team fights, a little bit of ease of execution due to the tanky members, right? However, Kha'Zix, especially once he gets the R evolve, is one of the best champions. Hook is on.
A lot of CC. There might not be a way out, and Kiaya goes down.
With jump, with flash, everything available. Kiaya just cannot get out of there. Really great layering of CC from Splyce.
Yeah, and I think honestly intelligent to not use the flash once he was out of the CC because he was so low, and now Splyce looking for Xerxe.
What a cast, but the E was already primed. Xerxe played that so well to have an out button. Has to jump away still. The ult was burned regardless.
People will remember Xerxe from his time on Fongbu Buffalo. This is a guy that we hyped up for so many worlds, and then it was actually the bottom lane that were able to do some damage. However, this is once again a player that is returning in great form. We talked about the fact that GAM do like to play around top and jungle, and Xerxe is looking to right a lot of those wrongs from international tournaments. Good navigation of a gank there. However, is under significant pressure as Splyce do rotate up to this top side of the map.
Yeah, and taking the rift as they are doing this, Syndra is now actually going to TP up top side to try to defend this, but Rift Herald pretty much already gone here for Splyce, and yes, it is post-turret plates, but they can still look to actually push for that first turret with this.
All right, there's going to be some gold in the pockets, then still only a 400 gold difference. GAM laning pretty well despite the kills coming through for Splyce, but you have to imagine, yeah, about 700 comes in if you can get that Herald charge and knock down first turret for yourselves. Next Drake spawning is Infernal. That's actually going to require some attention, so that 5-on-5 at about 17 minutes in is going to be a pretty big deal.
And this group is now just insane. You know, with J-Team picking up the victory over FPX and Splyce with ease navigating this early game from GAM, which was pretty stock standard, to be completely frank, now really makes you question, you know, what the strengths and weaknesses and how the game is going to play out. It feels like this longer, more extended pressure style of meta that we're seeing at World so far certainly is not in the chaos style of FPX and GAM, which should have been able to throw a lot of this group into big questions.
Yeah, it certainly is, and you know, especially with GAM, if they are not, you know, going to be opting into kind of that style, I think especially for them, you know, even more so than FPX, you know, that really was kind of the pony they rode to get to Worlds. FPX did always have, you know, very strong late game team fighting. Obviously not in their first match, but now Xerxe getting found here by Levi and will be pushed out of the jungle, but nothing more than that, and maybe getting collapsed on.
Gonna get the blast plant though. He's gonna get pretty far before the knockup comes in. Jumps now as well, but yeah, no one else is in range to chase that one down. No way Kobbe is gonna arcane shift over that wall to be isolated by the rest of the squad. So able to jump out in time, but does lose the ult.
But once again, that's kind of the first real aggressive move that we've seen out of Levi, trying to look for a kill as opposed to just a buff denial. And it was rebuffed very simply, you know, multiple members heading over, protecting the jungler. And this is what we expect out of Splyce. Xerxe is such a loud voice on the team in their comms, and just being able to ensure that he's not getting punished. You know, sure, he's down CS, but the job of Gragas is very easy in these comps.
Yeah, it certainly is. And I mean, I think, you know, though Levi hasn't really been doing much of any fighting, I don't think it's really for lack of a trying, right? You know, they're trying to set these plays up on the top side. They're trying to set up opportunities to actually, you know, go for dives or have a fight at the red buff. Splyce is warding it out. Splyce is actually, you know, sacrificing those buffs and sacrificing those camps when they are not in a position to actually win those fights very intelligently. So they're handling this quite well.
See the farm for Levi at least doing quite a lot there. Had about 800 gold over his opponent in Xerxe, and now 900 gold lead for Splyce overall, and he actually sends them in that brush. Kiaya in a bad spot, can't do the damage, but the cask, oh, flash, ignite still enough though. The kill comes through. Splyce 3-0.
And Splyce throw everything. There was a kitchen sink in there somewhere as well. Double stack minion wave, Rift Herald going to be dropped, and now the gold lead should start to open up.
And I'm pretty sure it was that lane ward that was in the middle of the lane that must have spotted him walk into the brush because he distorted in there. It seemed like Humanoid had full knowledge that Tristana would be lying in wait, and that is a great kill to grab for them. They have the Rift Herald that still needs to be answered, and they're pushing mid.
They're pushing mid, trying to get some damage done. The pull comes in. They still got a decent minion wave, but they're not going to push in the mid lane. Instead, they're going to let that Herald keep pushing to the top side. Now, the attempt, though, is Norskeren takes a bit of damage, and this Drake is alive. It's going to maybe have to be fought for. You can see Levi's on this side, but they are sending Kiaya. Now, he went top side, and he's turning back around. He's really wants to fight for this Drake, and I think we'll see top take some damage as a result. No one's willing to play top side. Huge! Oh. Goodbye! A solo kill for Humanoid. He's 3-0.
Yeah, sitting 3-0, has the Ludens, has a large rod on top of that, and oh my god.
And we said that, you know, if there were two players, hold the thought.
Oh, this is going to be a lot of damage. He's going to... Just kidding, it's none.
Good sidestep.
Yeah.
Yeah, really nicely done. And I said, you know, if there was going to be two players that would actually, you know, thrive in this style of game that could propel Splyce to the early game advantage, it was going to be Humanoid and Xerxe. And so far, both of them have actually had really, really good early games. The ability to track around Levi, and now the solo kills and the pressure of LeBlanc on the map. Certainly towards the win conditions of Splyce.
And such a critical kill because it's not just that, but they had pressure on the top side from the Rift Herald. They get the Infernal as an added bonus because there's no way that GAM can actually take that fight once you've lost your Pyke for free. So Splyce looking to be in full control despite the fact that the gold is close. That is largely the farm advantage actually coming out here from Levi as well as Xerxe, but you know, with the scaling edge that I think you are seeing in some of these roles, and also with the ability to kind of dictate when and where you're fighting, with the hard engage that we saw showcased in mid lane to actually kill Kiaya, Splyce is looking great.
And so much respect given from Splyce, just say. You saw, you know, without any members showing on mid lane, back away from the top side of the map. You know, Chachi, just go take yourself a pair of Krugs. I don't need this at this stage of the game. You know, only pushing in bottom lane. A hard split of the map also coming out now from the Splyce lineup. I think that, you know, this is where you can frustrate a team like the Marines and, you know, ensure that the game pace does slow down and continue to track in Splyce's favor.
Still might be fast, though, for them as Humanoid's going to look for some more to do. Meanwhile, though, the rest of the squad down on the bottom side, they've found where Xerxe is. He forced a flash over the wall, 3 gold down to the bottom lane, though. Top turret will go over, so GAM getting some money on this one. Only a 1,200 gold difference, but bot will be answered all the same as Humanoid continues to stack up gold, and no one at all has magic resist. This LeBlanc is lethal to everyone.
Yeah, I mean, Kiaya, because he is kind of behind quite a bit here in gold, not actually feeling like he has the ability to kind of make that sidestep towards some MR, right? If you go for the Hex Trigger now, do you have enough damage to deal with the rest of the team and actually threaten that while sitting on just the Blade of the Rune King? And he's certainly making the call that he does not. He doesn't have actually the luxury to look for that.
And that just means that now it's nearly impossible to deal with Humanoid, right? Because you don't want to be sending Xerxe into that lane either. We've already talked about how it is difficult for the Akali to deal with it, and it's 3 kills. That's an out-of-control lead. So I think that this is what we're going to see more of. You know, very heavy weak side from Chachi, burning the ultimate to protect the waves, making sure that they're always trading up, and GAM continually running into the jungle, trying to look for these skirmishes and fights away from Humanoid.
Yeah, and I think if you're GAM, you're hoping that Xerxe can keep up this pressure, right? Despite the fact that he has been pushed away a number of times, still up 30-odd CS, will be knocking down the turret here. And you're hoping that Xerxe can actually buy time for Kiaya to hit, you know, 3 items, to have the IE, the rapid fire, and then start going for those luxury items and allowing to get themselves into that position where maybe they can take a fight.
Not quite going to get that pull. It's going to be safe recalls now for the Splyce side. As we wait for the next phase of action. Mountain Drake, number 2, going to spawn in 2 minutes. There's Baron already alive here as well. Splyce not pushing too heavily for the vision control yet, but you know those objectives are on the menu soon. Whoop. Little poke.
And I like the continued fishing from Humanoid. You know, the ability to continually just arc the pressure, push people back in lanes. You know, we keep speaking about the fact that Kiaya has scaling on his side, but if Humanoid continues to generate this pressure for Kobbe, for Chachi as well, certainly no slouches in that scenario. And I think that, you know, potentially eyes will turn towards the Baron. We can see a potential setup coming out from here. You know, you do have to respect the Blade of the Rune King, the Kha'Zix, you know, as well as the fact that if you don't have a way to engage a fight, normally the best way to do that is control the area around the Baron buff.
Yeah, I mean, while I think Splyce is kind of holding all the cards, if you do actually misnavigate some of these fights, if you pull off a poor engage, there are 3 assassins on the team of GAM, plus this Syndra, which, essentially is kind of acting like an assassin as well. So if you misposition, if you overdive and have these assassins getting back onto Kobbe, onto Humanoid, onto Vizicsacsi, they can go down in a hurry. So Splyce is certainly wanting to play it safe, wanting to make sure they have full vision and control before they opt into really any of these fights.
And they're just doing it so easily at the moment. You saw that, force away from the top side, make sure that there's no rotation into the mid lane, take down an additional turret. This is a Splyce that has complete control over the map state at the moment and aren't really looking all that concerned with anything that GAM are doing. I think that this is a pretty convincing game so far with not many mistakes coming across, apart from that barrel chain.
Sure, but the only way you lose this game is if you get assassinated.
He was anticipating the auto.
Yep. Either way, the only way you drop is the assassins. There's a lot of them here, but they aren't finding purchase at all. 0 kills for GAM. A couple of turrets, they got a Drake, but not killing the champions themselves, and now surrounded is Xerxe. His health bar exactly that.
And this is what we've seen all game, is now Levi in trouble.
Gets some damage, but Humanoid just far stronger. Nowhere on the map is GAM strong here.
Yeah, and I mean, that's what happens when you miss some spells. Imagine if he had have connected everything. Levi would have gone down. That could have been a Baron setup, however. I think that this rotation from Splyce has just been so clean this game. Every time a member is past River, it just looks like they have complete awareness of where he is, knows that they can collapse and take them off. And if that happens, in a couple more minutes, especially with the double mountain starting to farm up, that is a very clear avenue to a Baron and victory for Splyce.
Yeah, it certainly is. And, part of the problem here for GAM is, even if you have your support moving over to Xerxe, there's no real clear way to actually start the fight. And this is why I love how Splyce is actually playing this out. Just moving Xerxe around, grouping up with him, knowing that they have that hard engage. And that is just a great body slam, knocking him out of the air there, setting him up for Kobbe to grab that kill.
And it's all about information first. Don't just go to your waves. Don't get collapsed on. Always go for the information. Let's find out where the laners are before we actually try and push things out past River. And that is such an important lesson for League of Legends players to learn. You can see that Chachi, one of the veterans, we questioned how he went in the play-ins, but certainly having a good performance so far. 0-0-1 into Xerxe and Levi, into the area of the map that we thought they were going to attack. Pyke up into his lane multiple times in that laning phase. First 2 red buffs stolen away from Xerxe. Played a very good weak side on the Gangplank, and now is at the position of the game. Going towards that more as his second item, going to be very effective in these team fights.
As the wards drop down, Baron's starting to be controlled here on the Splyce side. Double Mountain make it drop a little bit faster than usual, as 2,500 gold puts them well in the driver's seat here. Levi waiting in the brush, hoping that Humanoid steps too far forward. But is he concerned with taking the fight at all? That answer is no. Now finally jumps across. Huge damage on the LeBlanc, flashing away but burning down. And finally a kill on the board. A flash out for Norskeren now as well. Is this the turn for GAM as they try to find the Bone Skewer? Goes the wrong direction. Norskeren can flash over the wall, and he has
no flash.
But there's no way out, so Baron will slowly kill him with no exit. Slowly but surely, he will indeed die, and he will drop. Xerxe gets the credit now out of that one.
And that is just a huge pick there from Levi. What a play. Utilizing that Duskblade Warrior. Big power spike right here for him right now. And yes, Humanoid is incredibly strong. Yes, he puts out a massive amount of damage, but there's no survivability on this LeBlanc either. And the challenging smite burn there, looking like it was able to finish him off. And this is just Norskeren not able to get out of the back of this pit. Didn't have his flash, and the back spike's just slowly going to knock him down. You can see Kobbe flexing his muscles a bit there, though. He's sitting on 3 items and almost able to actually knock down Q3 right there.
Yeah, you can see that the funnel of gold into Xerxe will continue. They need this Akali to be big, but you mentioned, the ability for Kobbe to just sit there, stand and deliver, no real threat, and that's what happens when you're running no frontline versus Ezreal. This is a Trinity Force Ezreal as well that is going to be pumping out so much DPS, and I love to talk about Ezreal the way people used to talk about AFLOX, right? It's about the amount of uptime that you actually have in these team fights. Sure, if you stand and deliver, other people do out-DPS him. However, in this ability to navigate, his uptime and his DPS is so damn high.
Well, the Baron has been started in Fog of War. Splyce trying to rush it down. Levi is around! But it's going to be Xerxe grabbing the smite. So now with Baron on, this could be a battle. Humanoid trying to kite away. Jumps on, flashed. A lot of damage, but he'll survive through the explosive charge. Humanoid running out. He's going to stay alive. Jumps over the wall. Baron, no death. Splyce get the victory on that.
And that was a really decisive Baron take there for Splyce as Xerxe looks to continue the fight.
No way in, though. You can see the disengage there, the explosive, not even explosive cast, just the regular barrel for the slow gets the disengage.
Yeah, and that is just a great call from Splyce. The confidence to rush it down. They're able to get the secure. Levi not able to steal it away. And the one thing that looked like it was going to go right for GAM in that fight was Kiaya perhaps taking down Humanoid, but he didn't get the Buster Shot off. And I think that was the passive. LeBlanc going into the passive and then losing sight when that Buster Shot would have been the final damage to actually take her down.
Yeah, and it certainly looked like the wind-up animation went through, but not the continuation because of exactly what you're talking about now. And we've already mentioned, you know, if you don't have great wave clear, if you don't have the ability to start the fights, how do you deal with the Baron buff? And Splyce recognize that and just march it down mid lane.
They trade the mid lane, no problem right there, so it keeps the gold lead pretty solid. The gap was closing, but with Baron picked up, it's stretched right back again, and Splyce will have 2 minutes to work with. Look to drop many more turrets. Already on 4, but they're going to grow that by a couple, you have to believe. Mountain Drake will spawn and be claimed during this Baron buff as well. But wait for that is, yeah, Q3 gonna get chunked. And flashes, he wasn't sure he could live through True Shot Barrage.
And once again, this is just good fundamental League of Legends from Splyce. Wait until the Kha'Zix shows. Wait until you have eyes on the Akali on bottom lane. Now they're looking to re-aggress. They're looking to cut the minion wave and continue the siege.
Yeah, and traditionally you'd say, all right, well, they have someone down in the bot lane. GAM need to engage. But how, right? You know, unless you can get some sort of a flank, there's not really any way to actually walk straight into these champions.
And normally it's flash on someone, but all the flashes are down. They've been fighting and they've been losing, and that means that it's nearly impossible to be able to start these up.
Big chunk in the mid lane down to 1/3. Stun means a little bit, but not a lot, as the cannon minion still charging. Kobbe gets the auto attack in. There's another turret going down, and it's already up to 6. 3 turrets claimed during the Baron buff, as bot lane was being split pushed by Chachi as well. He has a red buff. Zeros can try to defend him. That's not going to go well either.
Yeah, I mean, Chachi now has his Essence Reaver, a big 2-item spike for him. The Death Cap came through for Humanoid. So, you know, these solo laners for Splyce are not messing around, and they are pushing in. This should be their mid inhibitor, you have to feel like, as they can just continually poke away, play it slow. It's on GAM to make something happen, and they just don't have the tools to do so.
Yeah, and I feel like that flash... Oh, actually, they go bottom side.
It's going to be a 3v1 here for Chachi. Tries to cut away. Ulti still charged. The E in as well. A lot of damage available. Trying to chase. They don't quite get the first slow, but Zeros almost dead. He's burning down. Kobbe claims it. Flash and a Ruin King, but now he's jumped up by himself. Shut down by one of the assassins. Now the re-engage towards Levi does not have the health bar left. That's the kill picked up. Norskeren pops a stopwatch. The team must disengage, but they've got the rest of the squad coming around. Xerxe explosive casts back in Zen, and he a second kill in for Humanoid, and it's only Q3 left alive. Only 1 kill, and it means the push can continue into the bottom lane.
And Splyce just wiped GAM off the map. That was one of those chaos-style fights. However, everyone from Splyce on the same page. They wanted to rotate, they wanted to fight, and they will take game 1.
Splyce absolutely the better team. This group looking like Splyce going to be the ones to watch for now. They will grab the first win of the group stage for the LEC. They will strike down GAM Esports in their first matchup, and we end the day with the European team winning on home soil.
Gotta say, a damn good performance here from Humanoid to start off the group stage for Splyce. Looking very good throughout this game. Really the kind of most notable proactive member here, making things happen, getting chunk outs, and even that pick in the final moments, corralling GAM, coming in from behind and just erasing the Tristana off the map.
And if you're gonna have a game that goes for 30 minutes and there's only 12 kills, and it's GAM versus Splyce, I could tell you with a lot of confidence that that is going to be Splyce picking up the victory. And so much of today's play has just been built around, can we play the game at our pace? Can we impose our will on it? We saw that out of TL, we saw it out of J-Team in our final match of the day. We also saw that in spades from Splyce. This is a young team coming onto the world stage. That would be a big confidence booster that they can play their style of League of Legends and they can make it work.
Yeah, it really is so much for their confidence, especially coming out, you know, against UOL, people doubting them, being able to take down GAM in a very decisive game 1 here, and having seen FPX just fall to J-Team, you've got to be feeling like Splyce, hey, we could win this group.
Yeah, which is pretty incredible. We knew that the group was likely to be wide open from the second place perspective, but I mean, Splyce handled GAM first of all, so if there's not some way back in for that one, this seems like a matchup that'll repeat itself. Handedly the better squad. The other teams have to see, you know, was this a one-time thing or not, but Splyce have to be feeling very good. They have to feel every team in this group now is beatable, and their eyes should be on the prize.
And Splyce have shown a great bar to me throughout play-ins and now into this first game. However, GAM also need to go away from this and say, our draft needs a lot more respect in it. You can't give Xerxe maybe his best champion, especially if we're going to play towards attacking that top side of the map. So I think there are certainly key takeaways. A lot of this was on Summoner's Rift, but a little bit more preparation going into this, I think would have gone a long way for GAM.
Yeah, I really agree. And, the creativity was there, but, no ways to actually force fights. And that really is the trademark of GAM. This is the team that wants to fight you, that wants to make things happen, and perhaps too used to their opponents in the VCS opting into those fights as well, where a composition like this, you're going to have the other team scrapping with you, and maybe you're making those things happen. You're snowballing that lead just through mechanical outplays. But when you don't have hard engage, Splyce is not going to opt into fighting you.
And I think that's pretty unforgivable, right? Because you've had the whole play-ins to watch how Splyce want to play. This is a team that was running Yuumi, Claire, Jax, like the list goes on and on and on for the amount of force stalls, even things like Gragas for Levi. Instead, they went away from that completely in the opening games of Worlds.
3 assassins, the goal is to find individual champions and kill them. They were killless until maybe 18 minutes when Levi found a solo kill. So it means the rest of his team was still doing nothing even beyond that point. It took him a long time to get much done. There was a couple of small moments that went okay, but overall, yeah, as to what you were saying, Splyce got to play more their pace, a low kill game where they kept their opponents killless for about 20 minutes, and that is a Splyce victory.
Yeah, I think Splyce looked great. I think one of the kind of bright spots there for GAM was Xerxe. I do think that he was able to maintain, a solid amount of pressure. Even once Splyce had kind of taken over the game and really were running things in the side lane, people were collapsing on him, people were forcing cooldowns out of him, but he was able to maintain a pretty solid CS advantage and have some pressure on the turrets, taking multiple turret plates during the laning phase. But they're going to need a lot more because that was not a close game, and that was Splyce, dancing to the tune of their own drum.
Yeah, and my standout player was Humanoid, who's, this is his first year playing in an LEC level environment. He's, played a bunch of, lower level matches before, academy type stuff and everything else. But I think to me, he was my biggest player. His solo kills were great. He got off to an early lead and really sort of just pushed his will on everyone else. Now, to break down that win from Splyce and to wrap up the day, let's hand it off to World's Cooldown.